Welcome to the Pride of Detroit PODcast, prideofdetroit.com, Pride of Detroit on Twitter, Pride of Detroit on Facebook. You lovely people, you know how to find us. You know what you're supposed to do. We welcome you in to celebrate a Lions victory here after week 3 on the Pride of Detroit PODcast. Wow. I'm Chris Perfett, the adequate host, being very adequate in learning how to speak. It's a new language for me. It's not the language of football, my native tongue. You'll have to forgive me. I am the host and multimedia editor for Pride of Detroit, and joining me as always, Jeremy Reisman, the fearless leader producer of Pride of Detroit, the one who actually has an official title here at Pride of Detroit. Hello, Jeremy.
You know what wasn't adequate today?
What's that?
Lions' damn defense. They were well above adequacy.
Beyond adequate? Beyond adequate.
Beyond adequacy. And I
didn't know you could do that.
So excited to talk about it.
Joining us as always, Ryan Matthews, the Rock God, senior editor at Ryan_POD. People have been asking for the drop to come back. I feel like it's either I put in the drop, people get mad the drop is there. I take out the drop, people get mad the drop isn't there. I can't win, Ryan. I can't win.
Yeah, I think people were upset when Amon-Ra St. Brown dropped a pass too, though. But you know what? Like all things Lions this week, we're going to overcome and we're going to rise above.
That's right. Wow, what a win. Falcons 6, Detroit Lions 20 on a game where you look and you think Jared Goff's going to throw a pick. The Lions are only going to score 2 touchdowns. And that's fine because the age of defense is here in Detroit. The branch that has been planted is a tree upon which all things grow. No, I don't think that's how trees work.
No,
Jeremy.
I don't think so either.
No, that's not. Grafting. Grafting is maybe what I'm thinking of. We've got some hell of a studs to talk about when it comes to the defense, but as always, you get started on overall takes here. The Lions improved to 2-1 and right a lot of concerns, especially about their defense that they had last week against the Seattle Seahawks by beating up on another Bird team. So, you know what? I want to start with Ryan this time. I want to start with Ryan's big hot takes from this game.
Oh, I don't know if I have any big hot takes, but I will say that, you know, the old adage is true. Winning cures all. And I'm sure that this is, you know, much better than the feeling that a lot of Lions fans had after last week's loss to Seattle. So the thing I love about this football game today is I can't remember the last time the Lions defense held the football team to 6 points. Like that is something that I can't really dig back into my memory banks and think about. Like, you know, their defense won them that football game. Like that was my big takeaway. And it was one of those moments where, again, like I can't remember the last time I walked away from a television after a Lions game and thought, man, it really was the defense that won them this football game unequivocally. No asterisk, no qualifiers, Jeremy. Their defense won them this football game point blank.
No question, right? I mean, I would argue that they probably won the Chiefs game too, but you did say the word asterisk, so I feel like maybe you were referring to that game sneakily. But yeah, like the Falcons, who had one of the best rushing attacks in the NFL, had a young quarterback who was starting to change people's minds, got completely shut down in every facet of the game, and just like they had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to get back in that football game, whether it was Lions going 3-and-out, the Lions gifting them an interception, and every single time they never got close. It wasn't just like, oh, well, they missed on this play here, or, you know, they did miss a field goal, but if I'm not mistaken, I think they only had one red zone trip the entire game, and it still didn't feel like they even got that close to scoring. And so, yeah, it was just a pure dominating defensive effort from start to finish. And that's what because I feel like when the Lions got up 3 scores, I kind of half expected the Falcons to go and maybe score a garbage time touchdown. Maybe they did score a field goal, and this to be like a 1-score game and whatever. Like, no, I think the defense came out of that game and they wanted to make a damn statement and say, last week wasn't us. That's not us. And so we are going to play you hard. We are going to play you physical for 60 damn minutes. And that's exactly what they did.
I believe that this was the matchup the Lions really wanted, and it was a very good game for their defense to have a matchup that was going to play to their strengths, and it was after a very humbling lesson when it comes to how to deal with quarterbacks. Last week, they let Geno Smith throw. They let him sit in the pocket and let him throw. This week, they hang up, I'm sorry, how many sacks? I believe,
7.
what was it?
7.
7 sacks. 7 damn sacks. They've had 1 in the past 2 games. That's the difference. That's what happens when you start rattling the cage of a young quarterback like Desmond Ridder, who's not like a top quarterback of this game out there. Not only that, but the Atlanta Falcons, who have a very dynamic, very young offense between Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Tyler Algier, Bijan Robinson, and what did you do? You shut down a part of the game that they like to play, which is running the damn ball. You shut that down pretty well. Bijan's damage was limited to like what, an 11-yard long, I believe, 3.3 yards average on the ground.
Yeah, 33 rushing yards,
and
nothing.
Yeah, so 60 yards total from scrimmage for Big Bijan. Not a day that the Falcons can win on that, and yet I think the Lions need to rely on their defense more and more, especially as they're still trying to get over some of the woes that have befallen them on offense. I don't think today was the best offensive showing for the Lions. I don't think they'll have too many games like that, hopefully. I think a lot of that comes from their offensive line looking poor because of the injuries that would pour in, and one side of the line just really, really struggling. And we'll get to some of that later on. And not having David Montgomery has clearly impacted how much they want to do on the ground game until Jahmyr Gibbs found his mojo later on in that game as well. But after Gibbs, without Montgomery, there's really no one they can turn to in that regard just yet. But it's good when you can win your games on defense. It's good when you can, because I'm not going to lie, it's a new feeling. And even when it was 13-3, and then later, 13-3, I felt tight. I'm not going to lie. It's hard not to feel tight in that situation, knowing that the Falcons, I should say, have in the first couple games this year outscored their opponents very well in the fourth quarter, and that the Lions were letting the Seahawks stick around last week in the fourth quarter. It had all the makings of it, but it doesn't matter because you've got weapons like Aiden Hutchinson and Brian Branch on defense. And they're evolving now, and they're looking better and better.
Yeah, when we talked to Michael Rothstein last week, that was one of the things he said about Desmond Ridder. Is like, if this game is close in the fourth quarter, you guys better watch out because he's been very, very good in that final quarter. And not today he wasn't. Today he wasn't. He basically threw an interception to Tracy Walker, who decided no thanks. But I think listen, for as much as everyone was dogging Aaron Glenn last week, it's time to give him some flowers because it wasn't just a matter of changing how they performed. They changed what they did quite a bit. This is and let's not forget, this is a team that lost 3 significant contributors on defense last week. You lost both your starting safeties, you lost your third down weapon in James Houston, and you came out here and dominated. You changed what you did. You did a lot of single high looks, bringing a safety, whether it was Brian Brancher or Fatu Melifanu, into the box because you wanted to stop the run, and you effectively did. You started putting Jack Campbell on the edge, mixed things around on the defensive front, and it worked. Almost everything worked to its exact and what has been the one thing that people have complained about Aaron Glenn. Doesn't make adjustments. He does what he wanted. Like he's his own guy now. He's just going to play zone. That's what he wanted to do. He's just going to make everyone do it. Switched it up a ton today, and it all worked. And that is what a good... And listen, I think that's something that this coaching staff doesn't get enough credit for. I've mentioned it a couple times before. This team might not always start out how you'd like, but they are not afraid to change what they do. And through the 2 years, they've been a better second half of the year team than a first half of the year team. And now we're already starting to see some of the benefits of those adjustments. This time early on, because they have a deep team, because they have a talented team, because they have a team that when you lose starters on defense, they're not sweating it because they have good enough players on the defensive front. Good enough players in the back end.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to that point, Jeremy, is I know that there might be some people who, have piled on Aaron Glenn, especially in the past week after the Seahawks game, especially. And they might point to the Falcons and say, well, okay, it's a young, inexperienced quarterback.
Sure.
They should have done that. They should have done X, Y, and Z. They should have held the Atlanta Falcons without a touchdown. And, I just scrubbed the last 2 years of the Dan Campbell era. That's never happened before.
Yeah. The last time you were wondering last time they held a team to 6 points or less is 2018.
Yeah, and that's been eradicated from my brain for very, obvious reasons.
Sure.
But I do want to make the point, though, the thing that I'm most interested to watch on a second playthrough is how much man was Detroit playing versus how much zone were they playing? Because to your point, Jeremy, those are the kind of adjustments that need to be a feather in the cap, and people should recognize and appreciate Aaron Glenn for making from 1 week to another. And this needs to be underlined, put in bold. It needs to be italicized. It needs all the wingdings on either side of it. The Lions' run defense is so freaking for real.
Yes.
That here's the thing. I thought that the way that Kenneth Walker ran last week was, oh my gosh, how did they hold him to 43 rushing yards? Like, that was the hardest 43 rushing yards I've ever seen anybody get. Tyler Algier's 12 yards that he got today were the hardest 12 yards I've seen anybody ever work for in their entire lives because of one very specific play. And it's weird, but Tyler Algier was still standing. The play got blown dead, but there were 4 Lions players. That defense, the way that it swarms, and it totally just stops any kind of early down progression that the offense can get, and it forces them into long stuff. And I mean, news alert, rookie or for all intents and purposes, rookie inexperienced quarterback Desmond Ridder probably not going to be so good when you're forcing him into long down and distance situations. So,
and still bringing the pressure on him in those situations in a hellish way.
Yeah, I just Bijan Robinson, 10 carries, 33 yards. No matter how you cut it, you tell any Lions fan that stat line before the game, and you're like,
"We won."
Oh man,
yeah,
they won the game.
Yeah,
by how much?
If I can say something about just attitudes and another person I think kind of surprised me in here, and playing we keep using the line get comfortable being uncomfortable. Someone who was comfortable being uncomfortable in this game was Jared Goff. It took him a little bit of time to really, because you could tell that there was a point where Goff was struggling with half of his offensive line, like being down past Dan Skipper and having to play Colby Sorsdal was not ideal at all. That is not what the Lions want to do at all on their tackle position. Injuries just brought them down there because it took Nelson out, it took Skipper out, and suddenly it's like, oh God, what do we do here? And the Falcons zeroed in on that and started to attack Jared Goff, and Jared Goff was getting hit. And we've talked a lot about how you keep Jared Goff comfy in the pocket, you don't have to worry about him. You had to start worrying a little bit at times because he started to sail the passes here and there, and it was like, okay, he had another interception. It's like, okay, this could be a problem, but he got comfortable being uncomfortable. He was able to run that touchdown in. He was able to make the adjustments he needed late in the game. It didn't look pretty. It didn't look perfect. It doesn't look like the first 3 quarters Jared Goff you had where he was, making 22 completions, but it was good enough. It was good enough to not have those mistakes, because there were definitely some moments in the third quarter where it's like the offense isn't getting anything going. I'm kind of terrified here.
Yeah, no, I think the headline there is Jared Goff survives his worst quarter. Like, by far, that third quarter was the worst quarter I've seen him play in maybe a full calendar year. And he'll be the first to admit it. His interception, he said, that's one of the worst throws I've ever made in my career.
Yeah, and he was getting hit. I forget how many. I think the Falcons had about
they had nine
quarterback hits. There was that one where I forget the name of the defender, but he came up like behind him and looked like Goff had rolled something on his leg for a second. And I was kind of worried, but
yeah,
he played well.
You're right. He hung in there. he wasn't fantastic in the second half by any means. He was fantastic in the first half. I mean, I want to underline that too, but he had that game-winning drive, and granted, some of that was a lot of that was Jahmyr Gibbs, and some of it was just a brilliant play call from Ben Johnson, because who was going to expect a 3rd and goal run from Jared Goff? But he hung in there and took a lot of hits and made it on the other side, and so it is concerning to see the offense struggle for that long of period, and we've seen it happen a couple times this year where they go a full 1 to 2 quarters where it's just where is it? Where is it happening? Why isn't it anywhere? The running game has not been good for a couple weeks now. It seems like there is probably one very specific reason for that, and we'll talk a little bit more about all the offensive line injuries that are happening, and hopefully some good news that might happen later this week as we head to the Packers week. But for the most part, I think it's fine.
Yeah, I do think, though, Ryan, part of that, too, on the run game is, like, they were finally getting comfortable with David Montgomery, and here we are in a game without David Montgomery. And it looked like near the end, the Lions were getting comfortable using Jahmyr Gibbs, but Jahmyr Gibbs isn't the kind of guy you're just going to be able to send up the middle at times, and they just don't have – Zonovan Knight didn't step up to do that. Craig Reynolds didn't really step up to do that, and it took a lot of element away from the Lions in that regard.
Yeah, there are just a few things in that third quarter that I understand if you were concerned. I mean, I certainly was. I think the thing I was most concerned about is it seemed like Goff's play kind of correlated with that nasty hit that he took. The interception doesn't happen too far after that. But
he started sailing the ball after taking that hit, right?
He did, yeah. And it was one of those things where it's like, okay, it's funny because I think through so many games, even going back to last year, right, as soon as the Lions kind of caught fire, it was their offense. I mean, their run defense made improvements last year. But for the most part, each and every game, the Lions were in it because of their offense. And then today, there's that third quarter where it's like, oh man, like the Lions offense isn't keeping them in this game. They're not going to keep it 2 scores. Like, can the Lions, offense get its head out its butt? But like, didn't matter. Defense won the football game. And I think the biggest thing that I am not going to get too down about that third quarter is a few things, right? Don't love Jason Kabinda on 4th and 1. We can do something better than that for sure. And that's not even a hindsight thing. That's just Jason Kabinda. But penalties on both of those drives after that, there was the Penei Sewell holding penalty.
A lot of holding. Yep.
Yeah. But that moves it from, I mean, on that play, Amon-Ra gets a gain of 7 yards. That would have set it up 3rd and 3, except it's 2nd and 20 now.
Right.
And then on the very next drive, it was again
there was a
offensive
block.
holding by Ragnow.
Right.
There was the chop block 2 penalty on, it was Matt Nelson, I think, right? Yeah. But yeah, on that very next drive, like those 3 drives, and especially those are kind of like those 3 drives in a nutshell, where it's like, oh, like the offense just couldn't survive a 1st and 20 or a 2nd and 20. Yeah. But they're also not being super aggressive at that point, because I think you're seeing what's on the other side of the field, and it's like, our defense can take us home. Like, we're just going to like play some mistake-free football.
One really quick, interesting thing that Dan Campbell said after the game, he's like, we knew there were going to be a lot of flags today. This officiating crew throws a ton of flags. So hopefully that's not a problem next week.
Man,
you know
how much I hate it. I hate the officiating crew talk.
Can I end this segment with my spicy take, Chris?
Real quick, I just wanted to say one thing. Like, I hope that even though the Lions know they can rely on their defense, they stay aggressive on offense.
Oh yeah.
I hope that's by design, because I really want to like what the Dolphins did to the Broncos. I want to do that to teams. That's fun. Anyway, go ahead. What's your spicy take, Jeremy?
My spicy take is that this was more of a statement win than week 1. And let me explain. Because how many of y'all were in our live chat? I'm looking at you Twitch right now. How many of y'all were in our live chat claiming that the sky was falling, that the defense had no chance, that this team was never going to get anywhere with the defense that they were? All of the good graces from that Chiefs win, gone. Everyone was starting to think, maybe Mike Tirico was right. Maybe there was an asterisk. Maybe the only reason we stopped the Chiefs was they were missing their big weapons. Well, guess what? Lions just made a god dang statement and said, hey, the team that you guys saw last week, that wasn't us. The Seahawks may have gotten our number. That's not who you are. We're going to come in shorthanded on both sides of the ball and give the Atlanta Falcons a whooping. It was not close. The yardage wasn't close. The score wasn't close. This was a good old-fashioned whooping. And I think this is also shows just how much of a fire this coaching staff can light under this team. Because the thing I keep thinking about now, the beginning of the week, Dan Campbell, they just come off this heartbreaking loss. And what's Dan Campbell's reaction? I hate losing, but I love this. I love being in the mud. I love doubters. I love the challenge. Bring on the challenge. And he even said, like, he kind of tore into the team this week. He kind of, like, he told them, like, y'all better fix this. And they responded. And so having a coaching staff that knows how to pull the right strings and that knows how to pull a team. I mean, can this coaching staff prove any more than they have through 3 years that they can pull this team out of a tailspin? Thankfully, they did it only after one game now.
I will say this. I am glad we got the Chiefs before this T-Sizzle thing caught on.
I hate you. How did you fit it in here? You forced that.
I am forcing nothing. That is from on high due Taylor content. You know what's spicier, though, than Jeremy's take? Could it possibly be, Ryan, the Carolina Reaper jerky from Righteous Felon? Ryan's holding his hand right now, which means I have to unfortunately do this read alone. Just doing the heavy, unless Jeremy wants to get in. Oh, does Jeremy have? He does. He has.
It's time to celebrate. It's time to celebrate with my favorite flavor of Righteous Felon beef jerky.
Well, you know, I opened up my glove box today, and I found I still have one bag of Foul Capone. So I'm selling it to the highest bidder. As Jeremy bites into the Maryland Monroe, crab spice jerky from Righteous Felon, because Righteous Felon jerky and meat sticks are available to Lions players at the training facility at Allen Park, and they are celebrating tonight because each 2-ounce bag of jerky has 16 to 20 grams of protein. Each stick has 8 grams. If it's good enough for the Lions and this victory, buddy, it's going to be good enough for you too. Righteous Felon is based in Westchester, Pennsylvania, and they use locally sourced all-natural black Angus beef, and they pride themselves on superior quality, revolutionary branding, and unique flavors that go beyond the stereotypical jerky offering. I just told you about the Foul Capone. That may be just turkey jerky, but it's basil turkey jerky. Maryland spice, Truffalo Bill, truffle oil. They got biltong, too. I don't even know what that is. It's from South Africa or something. I've never been there. But anyway, we've also got something else to sweeten the deal for you in light of this victory. 15% off your order. If you go to righteousfelon.com and use the code POD15, you will get 15% off your order. 15%. That's a lot of money saved on meat. Use it at righteousfelon.com, code POD15, 15% off your order. When we come back on the Pride of Detroit POD cast, time to deep dive on some players, including a rising star on the defense. Ooh, buddy. Buddy. We'll be right back.
What's going on, guys? Miko here from Pride of Detroit. Thanks for taking the time to check out this clip from our most recent POD live stream. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see where the conversation went from here, all you have to do is click the link in the description that'll take you over to our Twitch channel. And once you're on our Twitch channel, be sure to drop us a follow or a subscribe if you're so inclined. That way you can be notified anytime we go live and be a part of our live audience, which means that you may be privy to content that doesn't always make it onto the audio version of the podcast or even onto YouTube. Also, if you're more inclined and you prefer an audio version of our live streams, you can click the links to both Spotify or Apple Music, which will take you to their platform, and you can download the entire audio version of the podcast and listen to it whenever you want to. Again, we appreciate you guys and thank you for the support. Be sure to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe to this channel if you're new, and we will be sure to keep bringing you amazing Lions content.